Dead internet theory. Most of the internet is fake. This theory is a collection of a lot of ideas from many people, but credit must be given to Illuminati Pirate for bringing together so much of this information into a single thread. I'm going to discuss a lot of what he says, as well as pull a ton of information from a variety of sources and comments from all over the web. The simple explanation for the dead internet theory is that the vast majority of the internet is actually generated by artificial intelligence, in conjunction with paid media influencers in order to manufacture consumers for an increasingly wider range of newly normalized products, as well as to dramatically sway public opinion and control the collective attitude or outlook of people or culture. For all of the younger people out there who didn't experience the internet as it used to be, the internet of today is vastly different. Before the advent of the internet-connected cell phone, or the mass adoption of the home computer, before social media even existed, the internet was a place where people came to express passion, hobbies, feelings, and thoughts. It wasn't filtered, or selectively shown to you based on what an algorithm thinks you want to hear. It also wasn't an echo chamber to reinforce your pre-existing beliefs, whatever they may be. It wasn't created to keep you locked into a website or an app for hours and hours every single day. The internet was a collection of human thought, both right and wrong, and what you found and enjoyed was up to you. It wasn't monetized. The point of it wasn't to get as many clicks as possible or to keep you engaged for as long as possible. It just was. The internet was whatever you made it. One doesn't realize that they're living in the Wild West until that wild is taken away from them. Just as such, most of us didn't realize that the freedom of expression of the old internet that we all enjoyed would someday disappear. But here we are. Only now, in its awful absence, do we realize how bad things have gotten. Like I said earlier, a lot of people have had this sinking feeling in their gut for a while, but they didn't understand or realize why. The fact is, there is a massive and incomplete puzzle here. Some of us have a piece or two, but none of us have all the pieces, and anyone that claims otherwise, I wouldn't trust them. This incomplete puzzle connects us all, so it's in our best interest to try to find as many pieces as possible. These days, the internet feels so empty and devoid of people. Have you ever noticed that? Truly hear me out here. The internet feels devoid of content. It's safe, sterile, bland. There is nowhere to go, nothing to do, see, or read. There are no experiences anymore. It's a collection of 10 or so websites or apps that everyone visits over and over again until they go to sleep, only to do it again the next day. It's a series of empty husks. The internet seems gigantic, but it's more like a hot air balloon, because there's nothing inside. The same repeated threads and pictures and similar replies reposted over and over again across the years, to the point that it's unremarkable anymore. All of your friends enjoying the same funny video as you, the same talking point shared repeatedly over and over online, or how every day something new is trending, so you better jump in and give your take on it. Every day, it's something, so the conversation can never linger too long. There's always the next new or shocking or unusual thing everyone is talking about. I'm sure everyone watching this has heard of a news story that sounds like the one that they've heard 1,000 times before, but this time it's new and shocking and unusual. It boggles the brain. For example, how many times have we heard something about a new type of moon only happening tonight or tomorrow? A blue moon, a blood moon, a super flower blood moon, a pink moon, a super pink moon, a hunter's moon, a snow moon. You get the point. Why does everything feel so fake and manufactured? It's always the same thing or a slightly different thing repeated over and over as if it's produced content made to distract and occupy your mind. Why get out there and march in the streets to demand better wages or safer working conditions after a grueling day of work when you can go home and saturate your mind on endless, mindless escapism? The new super glitter moon is happening tonight, and Jimmy Kimmel just said something that is hilarious, and Dr. Seuss books are changing. Aren't you mad? And have you seen the new Marvel trailer? Don't step back. Don't stop to think. Keep engaged. Keep scrolling. Keep buying. Keep wasting your time. Keep pointlessly arguing with bots online made to offend you to spark unending engagement. Do you like superheroes? How about Hollywood drama? New music? The algorithm is here to feed you an endless supply of content based on what it assumes you want. Have any of you noticed how sterile fiction has become? How it caters to the lowest common denominator and follows the same template over and over again? How music is the same bland, seemingly created in a lab song over and over again? There is a reason for all of this. Algorithms and computer programs have been manufacturing content now for at least a decade that we know of. It's the Wizard of Oz mindset. Once you take a step back and the curtain has been pulled and you see it for what it really is, you can't go back to the way you used to think. It's like knowing Santa isn't real. No matter what you do, you can't make it real anymore. But let's go deeper into the internet side of things. Let's talk about YouTube. For the younger people watching this, YouTube used to honestly be about expressing yourself. It was random people in front of a camera talking about how they felt or what they've experienced. It was real, it was organic, it wasn't about trends. Nowadays, if you talk about the wrong thing, your video gets demonetized. If you say the wrong thing, your video gets removed. You can speak freely as long as you're okay with being suppressed in the algorithm and no one sees your content. The views, the clicks, the growth on YouTube, it's all nonsense. I did YouTube for 7 years before I got as big as I am today, and it's completely artificial. That's what blew my mind. That was the difference between me not succeeding and succeeding, was realizing that fact. It's all fake. Say the right things and push the right content and you'll succeed. You go with the way the wind is blowing. But if you stand in the face of that wind, you'll be standing there alone with 20 views. And this is not me complaining. These are objective facts. Look at almost any channel you subscribe to and take a look at their views. Individuals are being pushed away in favor of corporate news, corporate music, and safe and inoffensive content that makes money. Another creepy angle regarding YouTube and other forms of media are deepfakes. Not only can computers and AI replicate faces accurately, but now voices as well. The safest thing to assume is that the technology we see in the mainstream today was created 10 to 15 years before we ever saw it. So just imagine what AI can do now, what we won't be able to comprehend for years. It's so creepy to think about. Fake people, fake comments, fake faces, fake articles. It's terrifying. How much of the internet is actually real? People, events, news, so many things can be completely fictional. And I mean, honestly, how would we know? April 15th, 12 years ago off the Sunset Coast of Perth, Australia, a computer network analyst was arrested for stealing one of the most important pieces of insight and information we have today regarding all of this stuff. Upon his arrest and 8 hours of interrogation, he refused to disclose where he had gotten this information from. What information did he steal? Nothing. I just made this entire scenario up. Do you see how easy it could be for an AI or a computer program to write up a plausible article like this and disseminate it? Make 3 or 4 websites push different variant versions of the BS story. Share it to Facebook, Twitter, push it out on Google, and let the unknowing populace read it, believe it, and share it further until a fake story becomes a real story. How long do you think it would take for someone to realize it wasn't real? Things like this have honestly happened many times, and by the time the truth comes out, the internet has moved on to whatever the next objective is. By that future point, almost no one cares anymore, and the facts get moved off of search engines and pushed into unfindable parts of the internet. The internet of old is dead. Here's another interesting thing you yourself can witness. The internet on your smartphone is not the same as the internet on your PC. Try it out for yourself. Go to any popular website with a lot of traffic and spend a few days randomly checking the same thing from your PC and your smartphone. You'll notice from time to time that what you see on one device is completely different from the other. Entire threads can play out differently. Sometimes you'll see different comments, different like to dislike ratios on comments, all kinds of weird anomalies you'd only notice because you're coming at it from 2 different places. I'm sure a lot of you have experienced the case of trying to find that one comment that you really liked and never being able to find it again. Maybe it was simply deleted, but it's weird that so many of us have experienced that before. The argument for algorithms is that it helps us find what we want to see and caters to our likes and dislikes. That doesn't sound so bad, right? But I don't buy that for a second. Because for years and years the argument was that different algorithms for different people don't exist. It isn't real. What are you talking about? Well, years later, with overwhelming evidence to prove that algorithms do exist, now it's widely accepted as a real thing and spun as a positive. But that isn't necessarily true either. The algorithm is there to keep you engaged and hooked on websites and apps for longer, to accurately collect your likes and dislikes, and do whatever it takes to keep your eyes glued to the screen and your wallet spending money. If you linger too long on a certain thread or a video, the algorithm will recommend more like it. If you argue online, the algorithm will find and create more incendiary posts to rile you up and keep you engaged. If you didn't already know it, You are the product being manipulated and used, and AI will do anything to keep you there. What is right? What is wrong? What is allowed? What is not? It's a vicious cycle that weeds out dissent and critique. Nuance isn't allowed. I don't necessarily mean from a political standpoint, although I can't completely disregard this angle. So whether you're right-leaning or left-leaning or something else, suppression is a real thing for all sides. Discussion and understanding aren't good for business. There is a small Overton window of allowed discourse, and if you stray outside of that window, everything is done to squash you or hide you away. And I don't necessarily mean just extreme points of view. Take, for example, war. War is incredibly destructive and awful. So many innocent lives are lost and trillions of dollars are wasted. For what? Profits for corporations and defense contractors, and territory for the geopolitical chessboard, but nothing that directly helps you or I. But advocate against war, or try to make changes to stop war, and the entire internet will miraculously find a way to critique you, destroy you, and silence you. You are just one small voice in a sea of manipulation, money, and power. And that's not all. The AI and algorithms are used to push public opinion. World news is pushed only by a handful of specific people, carefully selected and manicured for you. For every hot-button issue, there is a deliberate and more often than not manufactured angle which is going to be pushed towards you to keep you fighting rather than collectively coming together. Let's briefly talk about the recently ended conflict. The fact of the matter is that no matter what time we left that country, it was going to collapse. 10 years ago, today, or 10 years from now. This is a fact, but they don't want that to be a fact. Obviously, the powers that be wanted us to stay there indefinitely because it is so lucrative. There are so many natural resources to pillage, and the money made by defense contractors was so great, we gotta stay there forever. Thankfully, public opinion was against this. People were tired of it and just wanted it to end. Americans need help over here, not more endless nonsense thousands of miles away. Now, notice how the dynamic shifted when the pullout started. Every major news organization went into overdrive doing everything they could to get back in. Every news channel, every website, every major influencer on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, any person that stood out there saying, "Hey, this is a good thing, bring them home," was crushed by an overwhelming majority online saying the opposite. Now this is incredibly weird, considering the vast majority of Americans say the exact opposite. Stuff like this is the perfect example, because you can really see where things aren't adding up. I'm not here to argue the details of leaving. I could make an hour-long video on that, or the political angle or any of that. If you have that deep urge to go into that, I must ask you to stay on topic. The anger and engagement and fighting is all a distraction. The point I'm making is that when there is a narrative or an angle they want, they are going to do everything to get it. It's creepy, it's weird, and it's unsettling. Let's talk more about social media. There is a reward and punishment system built in to push things in certain directions. For example, look at Reddit. I have joked for years and years that Reddit is a hive mind. Now that this theory has come along, that joke seems to be a lot less funny and a lot more realistic. Simply based upon a like or dislike ratio, Reddit can push up what it deems correct and push down what it deems incorrect. Then you have bots spamming to derail conversations on subjects they don't want discussed, and dividing and conquering on real issues to break down any progress that could be made. It's a psychological game being played on everyone. You want more upvotes, and to get them, you make sure you say the stuff that's going to get pushed up. Don't rock the boat, follow the trends, say agreeable things, avoid disagreeable things or challenging topics. The obvious point of Reddit having a point-based system is to make the points go up. This system discourages you from saying things that will make your points go down. You only want your points to go up. Do you see the problem? I'm not even that much of a contrarian, but the first thing that I do when I check out an interesting Reddit thread is to sort by controversial, because it feels so much more human. I want to read responses from people with different opinions, not so much to get mad or to argue with others, but to have my beliefs challenged. I find it ridiculous that I have to dig so deeply to find this kind of stuff. That's why so many places on the internet feel like echo chambers of repeated ideas and thoughts. I don't want to be reassured that I'm correct. I want to be challenged repeatedly so I can either strengthen my perspective or change it if necessary. Another social media I'd love to talk about is Twitter. What Twitter does is they place people in rooms, and you don't know what room you're in or how you got there, but you're there. You can't escape from these rooms or have a way of checking to see which room you're in or who else is in there with you. Upon learning this, you might think that the goal of these rooms is to lock you in with other people similar to you. But in fact, the goal is to generate high-intensity emotional responses, like outrage or humor. Swelling up your emotional state is more likely to get you to stay on these sites for longer, have more interactions, and allow them to collect more data on you to be sold or manipulated. By trapping us in these invisible rooms, you are more likely to see things you disagree with, but only to a certain extent. You will not have to actually face a detailed counterpoint to your argument, only a brief, incomplete summary maximized for high-intensity emotion. You see, the point of Twitter isn't to find common ground, or debate the issues. It's to misinterpret and argue and get mad and waste time and energy while they collect data on you and throw ads in your face. Twitter does this by imposing an overly strict 240-character limit per tweet to make it physically impossible to discuss complex ideas in such a small space, so conversations naturally devolve into insults and shock value. There's a reason the country feels so divided right now, and it's all intentional. Look at Facebook. It's a well of content thrown at you just to rile you up and support your pre-existing beliefs. Are you mad about this? Well, here is more stuff to get mad about. Are you worried about this? Well, here are more things to worry about. Do you love cats or dogs? Aren't they great? Well, this really bad thing happened to one of them. You better stay engaged and keep watching. Your emotions don't matter at all to us. Buy the stuff, argue a bunch, and keep isolating yourself from other humans because it makes you less powerful. So how much of the internet is fake? Studies suggest that less than 60% of web traffic is human. That's right, 60%. According to researchers, some years, a healthy majority of them are mostly bots. For a period of time in 2013, the New York Times reported that half of YouTube traffic was bots masquerading as people, a portion so high that employees feared an inflection point would happen, meaning YouTube systems for detecting fraudulent traffic would begin to regard bot traffic as real and human traffic as fake. They even have a name for this hypothetical event. It's called the inversion. Remember, this was all the way back in 2013. So it's not a stretch in the slightest to assume that the threshold of bot traffic has been met and surpassed, meaning that the internet is, for the most part, filled with non-living voices. It really puts it in perspective how outnumbered we are compared to bots. The vote counts on YouTube, Reddit, Instagram, it's all manipulated and distorted. Very little of it is real. For example, every single time that I upload a video, I lose around 10 subscribers. It's like clockwork. Doesn't matter what I upload or how popular it is, I lose around 10 subscribers right when I click publish. Amazingly enough, I'm not alone in this. This isn't a single glitch that just happens to me. This happens to most people with a big enough subscriber base, and I'm sure the numbers scale upward. The common prevailing theory is that it's YouTube's sly way of removing regular humans from the equation. If you're big enough and successful enough, you can weather the storm pretty easily. Losing 10 subs isn't bad when you gain thousands. But if you're a smaller YouTuber, or a YouTuber they don't really want around anymore, losing subs is an easy and subtle way to mentally break you down and eventually remove you from the equation. The push for corporate content and acceptable content is all that matters. YouTube isn't about you anymore. Just change the name already and call it Content Tube or Corporate Tube. But let's get even deeper and more disturbing. DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, is a research and development agency of the United States Department of Defense and is responsible for the development of emerging technologies for use by the military. DARPA had a program called LifeLog, and its goal was exactly that, to log one's entire life. LifeLog aimed to compile a massive electronic database of every activity and relationship a person engages in. This was to include credit card purchases, websites visited, the content of telephone calls and emails sent and received, faxes, postal mail sent and received, instant messages sent and received, books and magazines read, television viewing habits and radio selections, physical locations recorded by wearable GPS sensors, and even biomedical data captured through wearable sensors. The point of collecting all of this data on everyone was to identify preferences, plans, goals, and markers of intentionality. Another of DARPA's goals for LifeLog had a predictive function. It sought to, quote, find meaningful patterns in the timeline to infer the user's routines, habits, and relationships with other people, organizations, places, and objects, and to exploit these patterns to ease its task. Sounds absolutely terrifying, correct? Well, lucky for us, it was shut down February 4th, 2004 over criticism from civil libertarians concerning the privacy implications of such a system. Interestingly though, on that exact same day, February 4th, 2004, a small and little-known website at the time launched called Facebook. No, I'm not joking, not in the slightest. The exact same day that they shut down LifeLog, Facebook started. Lucky for us though, back in 2020, on Twitter, the official DARPA account came out to reassure people that LifeLog and Facebook have absolutely nothing to do with each other. Even though certain employees of LifeLog went to work at Facebook, it's nothing to worry about. Right. Once you learn all that, it makes you look back at all those news stories that you heard over the years of Facebook selling user information to other companies, and all this stuff seems pretty obvious now. We've been played, ladies and gentlemen. Then you had those NSA leaks years ago that the government was in fact spying on all of us, and when you add up all these pieces, it's easy to see that this is a massive puzzle, and we simply don't have all the pieces. There's a lot more information in the post by Illuminati Pirate, and I highly recommend anyone go check that out if you want to dig deeper into this topic. I'm going to have a link in the description. The conclusion that he draws is essentially this. The US government is engaging in an artificial intelligence-powered gaslighting of the entire world population. Now, whether you agree with this, or disagree, or accept some parts or deny other parts, you can't say this isn't a fascinating theory. It's a positive feedback loop. A stick and carrot approach. Say and do the right thing, get rewarded. Say and do the wrong thing, get artificially suppressed. This way the narrative can be strung along in whatever way a corporation or government pleases. Why debate and discuss ideas and plan for progress when we can instead yell about stupid, pointless culture war nonsense? Just think about it, the internet is the fastest way to retrieve, absorb, and share information. Of course it was going to eventually be manipulated and contorted into what it is today. Nowadays, everyone is too cowardly to have an opinion that clashes with what is deemed acceptable within the Overton window. Artificial trends created by who knows what drive the daily narrative. Then we get drawn into that by an overwhelming human obsession with being a part of the conversation. If you're not a part of it, you feel left out. And if you play it safe and you go with the flow, well, you feel validated and a part of something. It's human psychology and sociology used against us. In this way, the internet and social media, which was supposed to democratize media by allowing users to create whatever content they wanted, has instead been hijacked by the powerful. What was meant to be a communal space for growth and knowledge has turned into a battleground of the ignorant and uninformed, endlessly attacking each other over pointless convictions. The advantage that bots have over us is that they can create an opinion and repeat it and support it over and over again. They are faster than us, there are more of them than us, not to mention the positive feedback given to them and us for repeating their arguments. Think about it. We can't convince them to change their minds because they don't have minds. They are programmed to behave a certain way and do a certain goal. They are a monolith with a focused goal. We are fractured humans with minds that can oftentimes be changed. If 9 out of 10 people say that you're wrong, most people can't handle that kind of pressure, so they cave in and they join the other 9. This is human nature. It's nothing to be ashamed of, but it is being used against us. Most people don't want to be the odd one out, or the person that rocks the boat. This is what the dead internet is today. A brand new big budget movie releases, and all you hear is non-stop praise. Never-ending, unbelievable praise and worship for such a great masterpiece. It's weird. It's really weird. Obviously, the first thought you have isn't going to be, bots and paid influencers are pushing a narrative to sell movie tickets. So you go and see it. It was fine, nothing extraordinary, but here's the thing. Are you going to speak your mind and disagree with the collective? They said it's incredible, and you thought it was just okay. Are you wrong? Is it possible that so many other people are wrong and you just happen to be the one that's right? Do you see where I'm going with this? The internet today isn't at all what it used to be. So who is to blame? Is it us? Is it Google? Is it Facebook? The government? Politicians? Honestly, it's everyone. We got so preoccupied with life and small gradual improvements to that life, we didn't see what was happening. It was a small fire that started in the basement, and we just didn't notice it. And now the house is completely burnt down. So what can we do? I suppose the first way to do this is to spread awareness of this. Next, you can pull yourself and your content off Facebook and other social media. Extremely limit the amount of information you share with these companies is also important. Another thing that everyone could start doing for once is demanding bought and paid for politicians on both sides do better. Turning your phone off, unplugging your Echoes and Alexas, and getting away from everything would help. Imagine one day of no one using any of this stuff. The effect would be unbelievable. Lastly, we need to recognize that the internet isn't real life. We are all so tightly wound in our separate rooms that we have failed to recognize it isn't real. It's a distraction to keep you all separated and anxious. So pull the plug as much as possible. The fact is, we are all in this together. We are all humans who desire a better life, be it American or otherwise. We are all humans with brains and hearts and feelings and emotions. We want a better life for ourselves, for our children, and for the future. They are gaslighting us and manipulating us to fight with each other over the stupidest stuff. My main objective with this video is first and foremost explain the dead internet theory, but secondly to reinforce the idea that even if we disagree with each other over certain things, we need to realize that 99% of that noise is a distraction. We can overcome small differences. Everything doesn't have to be a fight. Everything isn't a life or death struggle, like frauds on the internet try to make it out to be. We don't need to separate and segregate ourselves into smaller and smaller groups just to infight. The more we do that, the less power we all have. If we want to change things, we have to realize that we are all in this together, and the further we grow apart from one another, the chance of us coming together for positive change gets smaller, and they win. So tell me, what do you think about the dead internet theory? Is this something you could see yourself believing, or is it too far out there for you to accept? There's a pretty powerful impulse in all of us that when we hear something huge that could change our view on everything, we reject it to protect ourselves. This is natural and normal. Humans aren't meant to have their entire existence blown up. No one wants to have their entire worldview, which they've built a life upon, crumble before their very eyes. It's intense, it's strange, but I challenge you to face it bravely. Personally, I find this fascinating, but honestly, a little frightening. The first time I read it, it gave me chills. But then again, every spooky mystery kind of gives off that vibe. Welcome back to another video on the dead internet theory. Consider this a sequel or a companion video to the original. To quickly recap, the basic idea behind the dead internet theory is that the internet as it exists now is empty, devoid of real people, and that the US government is using the power of AI to gaslight the entire world population. Yeah, that's a lot to take in all at once. So if you haven't seen the first video, I highly recommend checking that out. Whereas the first video was a deep dive into what exactly the dead internet theory is, today's video will examine one of the creepiest aspects of it. What is that aspect? Well, it's the concept that the internet is a Potemkin village. To kick things off, let's explain what a Potemkin village is. Merriam-Webster defines a Potemkin village as an impressive facade or show designed to hide an undesirable fact or condition. Let's break it down further. Trust me, all of this matters. Think of a Potemkin village like the set of a movie. There are impressively detailed fake buildings all around with painted walls, decorated rooftops, potted plants, realistic props, and intricate details littered about. In front of this movie set are actors and actresses dressed in period-accurate clothing, speaking in accents that fit the time and place. It's all fascinating, realistic looking, and entertaining, but it's fake. It isn't real. What's being shown to you is not reality. Now, if you knew going in that this was a movie set and that most of what you're seeing isn't real, this wouldn't be an issue. But a Potemkin village is made to deceive you. Let's briefly dive into the origins of this phrase. Grigory Potemkin was an 18th century Russian nobleman who, among his good and bad actions in life, allegedly wooed Catherine the Great. During Catherine's 1783 tour of new Russian possessions in the Crimea, Potemkin endeavored to show her and the foreign ambassadors accompanying her the best version of the empire. Apparently, Grigory had built up this grand facade of pretty towns in the distance on riverbanks. At stops, Catherine would be greeted by well-dressed regiments of men and serfs, all dressed up in fanciful garb to show off a grand sense of prosperity that didn't actually exist. In fact, there was a famine going on. My favorite example, though, was the exploding rockets spelling her initials. That was probably quite the sight to see. Now, recent historical evidence has led some to believe at least parts of this tale to be apocryphal, or lacking authenticity, despite being believed to be true, but the legend was nonetheless created. The term Potemkin village was set in stone. It signifies any deceptive or false construct conjured often by cruel regimes to deceive both those within the land and those peering in from outside. We're getting close, but before we connect all the dots and show off the big reveal, we need to talk about internet rot. It's a pretty gross name, right? The internet is 25 years old now, and was originally meant to be a place where information and knowledge could be transcribed, shared, and enjoyed with a worldwide audience. The concept is that information would stack. The more that got added on, the more it would grow. A potentially limitless amount of human knowledge right there at your fingertips, ready to be absorbed. I mean, the internet has grown exponentially since the 1990s. This concept still must hold true, right? I mean, has anyone ever honestly questioned that growth? What if in fact the internet is actually shrinking, and that shrinking can be broken down into two specific things: content drift and link rot? Hyperlinks are the glue of the internet. Think about it. Anytime you click a link, it takes you somewhere else. Well, that's a hyperlink. Without hyperlinks, the internet wouldn't work. Content drift is when the webpage you are trying to access through a hyperlink has been moved. It still exists, it just exists somewhere else. This can be caused by a number of different issues, but the potential to solve this connection problem is there and can be solved with some effort. That is content drift. The bigger and scarier issue is link rot. Link rot is the phenomenon of hyperlinks over time ceasing to point to their original target, due to that resource becoming permanently unavailable, meaning the information or the results that you wanted simply aren't there anymore. Did you know back in 2013, it was discovered that 49% of links cited in Supreme Court cases are broken? Meaning if you go back and try and read through all of those cases and decisions, nearly half of the hyperlinks do not work anymore. This isn't like some small fan site you enjoyed as a teenager being shut down over the years. These are links cited and used in Supreme Court cases, the highest level of decision-making in the United States, and they don't exist anymore. And this was back in 2013. I'm sure that number is much higher now. In 3 legal journals, the Harvard Law Review, the Harvard Journal of Law and Technology, and the Harvard Human Rights Journal, 70% of links no longer work. This isn't just a problem, it's endemic, meaning it's so common and so prevalent that it can't be dealt with easily. These two terms, content drift and link rot, combine together to make up the term internet rot. It's the fading away of the overwhelming vast majority of the internet. So when I say that the internet is dead, I don't just mean that the majority of people online are bots and aren't real. I also mean that most of the internet is dead, thanks to internet rot. Surely this is just the result of a natural cycle of older content getting relocated or removed and newer content taking its place, and links simply not getting updated, right? Well, it turns out it actually gets worse, much worse. You now understand the terminology and the history behind the phrase Potemkin village, as well as the concept of internet rot. But how does it all come together? The answer to that is Google. Google is a Potemkin village. Do a quick Google search, and within a second you'll receive a fancy facade of seemingly endless information instantly appearing before your very eyes. Incredible, right? Let's check it out. First, you need a basic search term to show off what I mean, and it can be whatever you want. How about pizza? That's simple enough. When you search pizza with Google, you are instantly given, at the time of this video, over 1 billion results in 1.02 seconds. That's incredible, right? I can't wait to dig through 1 billion plus links to pizza and discover all there is to find out. If you count the number of results on page 1, you'll see that there are 9 results. That's not a lot of links right off the bat, but I guess they don't want to overwhelm you with too much pizza knowledge. 9 results on the first page, that's fine. Let's go to page 2. Nearly the same as page 1, this time we got 10 results in less than a second. If you were like most people today, you probably wouldn't dig any deeper than this. Usually you can find what you're looking for on the first page or the second page of results, or you kind of give up. But we're on a quest for knowledge, so we have to go deeper. When we hit page 3, it's the exact same. Billions more results to go, with 10 results on the page. Same with page 4, and 5. But when I got to page 6, something weird happened. Somehow the results for pizza jumped up to 1,340,000,000 from 1,050,000,000. Did Google just discover 290 million extra pizza results between clicks? On page 24, Google still says we have 1,340,000,000 results to go. The next weird anomaly doesn't happen until page 25. It instantly drops to 1,210,000,000. I'm sorry, but where did those extra 130 million results go? It's crazy how hundreds of millions of results are appearing and disappearing, moving and shifting around so quickly and so easily. Going by the math of 9 results on page 1 and 10 results on page 2 to 25, we have only seen 249 results for pizza up to this point. The rest of the pages showed the same result of 1,340,000,000 until we got to the final page. What was the final page? I mean, it had to be an insanely high number to show all the billion plus results, right? Wrong. It's page 35. On page 35, the facade completely breaks apart and reveals the total number of results. listed as 348. That's 348 results for pizza total. As in everything Google has listed when it comes to pizza web results, 348. What? What happened to the other 1,340,000,000 results? Where did they go? Why does Google say that they have over 1 billion results when they clearly don't? Something isn't right here. Is Google a Potemkin village? Is Google showing off an intentionally deceptive high number to impress you, when in reality it's actually hiding the true number until after you've gone through 35 whole pages? Wait a second, let's step back, let's be rational about this. Before we get all crazy, at the bottom of the page, Google says, in order to show you the most relevant results, we have omitted some entries very similar to the 348 already displayed. If you like, you can repeat the search with omitted results included. Okay, everything makes sense now. That seems to be the problem. I guess the 1,340,000,000 results were very similar to the 348 that were displayed. If I was a simple man, I'd say, okay, that makes sense and move on with my life. But I'm not a simple man. I'm a man that demands answers when it comes to pizza. I want Google to repeat the search with the omitted results included. And wow, when you include the omitted results, you get a staggering 1,900,000,000 results for pizza. That's 560 million more results than originally promised. They found an extra 560 million pizza results. I'm sure this time Google will absolutely give me all the results it promotes. I went through everything and Google gave us an unimpressive 53 pages. Now at the top of the page, it still says 1,900,000,000 results. But I did the math, so you wouldn't have to. In actuality, Google gave us 529 results, most of which by the end had nothing to do with pizza. How can the most widely used search engine in the world only have 529 total results about one of the most popular foods in the world? It doesn't make sense. In fact, others have already done this experiment and come up with similar results. Climate change, one of the most widely discussed major issues of our time, with 60 years of research behind it, only has 438 total results. What? How? What about football? A whopping 462 results on page 47. How about aliens? That's another subject with an unbelievable amount of research, footage, and discussion around it. How many results does it have? 146. You can do this test with anything and the results are always the same. Google is a Potemkin village. It's a facade. It's pretending to be something big and grand, and there's nothing behind it. When you really stop and think about this, it's immensely troubling. It's been in front of us the entire time, but seemingly no one noticed it. And they're really clever with how they do this. First you see a really big number, then the pages and pages of results, then the comforting message that assures you that some of the results have been omitted. After that, when you hit the final page, it essentially means the end of the line. What's really interesting to me though are the dates of most of these results, especially when it comes to important topics. There is next to nothing before 2016. The few that there are from government websites, university research branches, or scientific publications, but noticeably missing are the personal blogs, web pages, any content created by individuals not affiliated with the media, a corporation, or government. It's really strange. So what in the world happened to all of the billions and billions of pages of content that people have created over the years? Is it all just internet rot? That can't possibly explain it all, can it? Are they actually still there somewhere in the background, but for some reason inaccessible through Google search? Or are they really just gone? We need to ask ourselves, why would Google want everyone to think that there are hundreds of millions if not billions more results out there than there actually are? The sole purpose of a Potemkin village is to provide an external facade to a country which is faring poorly, making people believe that the country is actually faring much better than it is. Is Google search the foundational product for a company worth $1.6 trillion as of July 2021 just a Potemkin village? And if it is a Potemkin village, who is this all for? Is it to fool the shareholders, the US government, corporations, Google, the internet as a whole? I'm sure some of you watching at this point have said, just use a different search engine. Sounds simple enough, but here's the problem. Just about every private search engine out there uses either Google or Bing as a proxy, not to mention the stranglehold Google has over the web search market. When it comes to cell phones, 94.1% are made using Google search. This is the exact opposite of a decentralized and open internet. The days of discovering random websites with just a search are over. Google has been heavily censoring content for years, and it's more than just a search result here and a search result there. There are tons of examples of this online. Pulling results because of DMCA claims of piracy, then the right to be forgotten, where the rich and powerful can scrub any mention of their wrongdoings from the media and search engines under the guise of anti-harassment. Then you have the tweaking of Google results based on layers and layers of new algorithms Google created. Initially, Google's intent was seemingly innocent. Try to anticipate what people are actually looking for and give them better results. I mean, that sounds helpful. Google's algorithms would dig through mountains of results and start refining search so people could get more relevant results faster. The problems began once they started tweaking the base search results without being transparent, without warning, and without any way to opt out. It didn't stay at serve the user better. The tweaks were used almost immediately to start selling ads. And once Google decided it was the arbiter of information, it turned this power full force against anyone and everyone that didn't play ball. Don't be evil has been a part of Google's corporate code of conduct since 2000. And I think for a giant corporation, that's a great way to conduct business. Don't be evil. It sounds very self-explanatory. Then Google was reorganized under a new parent company, Alphabet, and in 2015, Alphabet created a slightly adjusted version of the motto. Instead of "don't be evil," it became "do the right thing." You'd assume that by not being evil, you would be doing the right thing, but it's those little subtle nuances that tell you everything you need to know. Google is a Potemkin village, and the internet is rotting away. Decades of lost information is kept from us behind powerful gatekeepers, while billions of internet pages filled with anything and everything are being lost to time and rot. Imagine if millions of physical books all over the world just started dissolving away, the very ink on all of their remaining worldly pages evaporating and becoming unreadable. All the digital copies of those books become corrupted and unsalvageable. Imagine a world where this is happening and no one has really noticed it. No one seems to talk about it, and no one is seemingly bothered by it. I'm not saying everything disappearing has inherent value, but surely some of it does, right? Like all forms of entertainment, preservation matters so much because it's our history, it's our culture. Before the days of writing and record keeping, so much of our history has been lost. In the early days of cinema, so much of that footage has been lost. In the early days of music and audio recordings, so much has been lost. When it comes to video games, shut down online games, and interactive media, so much has been lost. Permanently. And here we are for the millionth time doing the exact same thing. It's a case of all of us living today and thinking about the future, but not taking a step back to see how important the past was. So what can we do to save this? Honestly, not as much as you'd think. First of all, using a different search engine, well, that's one attempt. Using the Internet Archive's Wayback machine is another way to store digital web pages for the future. If you've never used that site before, I highly recommend it. It's got all kinds of internet sites digitally captured in the past, and you can return to them today and look at them. It's nowhere near even close to being complete, but it's one of the only practical ways we have to preserve dead or dying websites and hyperlinks. It's also a great way to spend an afternoon being nostalgic. Go check up on your Neopets, I'm sure they miss you. Another thing you can do is upload any digital media you still have or can find to the Internet Archive. You can go on there now and explore years worth of archived content for free. Old books, films, songs, magazines, TV ads, internet video clips. Add to it, enjoy it, go check it out. I'm going to have links to all of these things in the description. What's going on, everyone? This extended clip was cut from my Dead Internet Theory 2 video. I started to ramble and go off on society and today's evil technology, and while entertaining, it felt really out of place in the video. But I thought it was still a pretty good rant. So here's that cut content for all of you to exclusively enjoy. I mean, here's the thing, I'm a millennial. I just want some stability. That's all I've ever wanted. A pandemic, declining life expectancy, a recession, a depression, a housing crisis, with another one on the way. The stock market is a gigantic bubble ready to pop, and now the internet is mostly filled with bots. It's rotting apart at the seams, and Google is a Potemkin village. I just want a year with nothing bad. Let's all take a year-long truce, okay? I'll shake your hand, you shake mine. We're gonna be like, listen, 1 year, nothing bad. Everybody take a break. All this evil stuff, just take a break. We can all get back to fighting and evil nonsense after that year. But for just that time, let's have one nice year of happiness, growth, and prosperity where we all get along. Maybe we can have a nice Thanksgiving or a nice Christmas, you know? Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that be good? Maybe we could go to the park and feed the ducks. That's always fun. But oh wait, that one guy over there is wearing the new Facebook Ray-Ban sunglasses with a built-in camera. I'm not even joking, that's a real thing. There are now Ray-Ban sunglasses with Facebook branding with a video camera built into them to record and automatically upload video clips to Facebook. That's a real thing. It's a real thing. It's like Google Glass, but super discreet. Can I even really be mad at this guy though? Because who knows, maybe his Facebook will generously tag me in that random guy's video. Wouldn't that be nice? I get a little video of myself recorded by some random stranger. Here's the weird thing that you might not have gotten from listening to all of this, but I actually really love technology. I think it's super cool. I think it's inspiring. I think it can change lives and make life easier for people. Also, it's really fun to use. But damn, why is it always used for such sketchy stuff? I want a really cool sci-fi future, but we're probably not going to get that, are we? We're definitely, absolutely, more than likely going to get a dystopian nightmare. That's just our luck, you know? Like I said, I'm a millennial. This is what I get to look forward to. Also, here's another thing that I don't think I've ever really talked about, but I think it's interesting. Facebook bought Oculus, and Oculus is one of the VR headset brands. They did a lot of the early innovation, making it mainstream, making it affordable, allowing it to reach the mainstream. So when they got purchased by Facebook, I was like, this is probably not a good thing. And it turned out it's not. They keep adding little stipulations here and there. Like for one, you have to have an account on Facebook if you use Oculus VR. That's like saying, hey, I want to buy a PlayStation. And they go, okay, you have a PlayStation? Well, now you have to set up a mandatory Instagram account. You see what I'm saying? It's kind of weird. You're like, I don't want to do that. And then with this account, if you ever get banned on Facebook or anything like that, you lose access to your games on Oculus. I don't get it. Can Facebook just go away? Just go away, Facebook. We're done with you. We've had enough. My name is Alltime, and welcome to the Dead Internet Theory 3. At first, we discussed how the internet has been invaded by bots and malicious algorithms made to monetize the internet and wipe away the past. Then we discussed how Google search is nothing more than a Potemkin village, a facade that projects a sense of scale and grandeur that isn't actually there. But today, we're going to go even deeper by examining the morally questionable actions of AI, corporations, and social media giants. So sit back, unplug your smart devices, it's about to get intense. Eric Emerson Schmidt was the CEO of Google from 2001 to 2011, an executive chairman of Google, an executive chairman of Alphabet Inc., which is Google's holding company, and a technical advisor for Alphabet. All this to say, Eric Schmidt is a company man, a man with an estimated net worth of $26.8 billion. Now, how does one make $26.8 billion, you might ask? I'm going to give you the answer to that later in this video. In 2010, Eric was asked an off-topic question about whether Google plans to implant technology into people's brains after making strides on the mobile internet. After laughing, he replied, "There is what I call the creepy line. And the Google policy on a lot of things is to get right up to that creepy line, but not cross it. I would argue that implanting things in your brain is beyond the creepy line." The interviewer asked, "Mine in particular?" And Eric continued, yes, at least for the moment. At least until the technology gets better." After explaining that Google is a bottom-up company and that he would not be aware if such a technology was in development, he continued, "As far as I know, we do not have a medical lab working on implants. As far as I know. I will check after this." Interestingly enough, Google has talked about this idea before. In 2010, one of Google's co-founders, Sergey Brin, openly talked about how we want Google to be the third half of your brain during a Google event unveiling Google Instant, the instant version of its search results. In an Atlantic article published in 2021 to prop up a new book by Eric Schmidt, Eric speaks candidly about AI and social media. He says, quote, "No one had any idea that social networks would become so important and would help shape the political discourse of elections, how people are treated. It would give a voice to people who are underrepresented, but also people we don't necessarily want to hear from. And we didn't, at the time, understand the implications of putting everyone on the same network. We need to think now of what happens when artificial intelligence is co-resident with us in this world. It lives with us, it watches us, it helps us, maybe interferes with us occasionally." I'm one to read between the lines, find the truth within the truth, and there's a lot of truth to be obtained from this quote. This line, "we didn't at the time understand the implications of putting everyone on the same network," stands out to me because it implies now they do know. and they don't put everyone on the same network. Another line that really stands out to me is, we need to think now of what happens when artificial intelligence is co-resident with us in the world. It lives with us, it watches us, it helps us, maybe interferes with us occasionally. When he says now, it's because it lives with us now, whether we want it or not. Notice how he tries to soften that last one so that it doesn't sound so bad. It only interferes occasionally when somebody with his background at Google, Alphabet, and the National Security Commission on Artificial Intelligence, who has made a staggeringly unbelievable amount of money to the tune of $26.8 billion, tells me we co-reside with AI and that it lives with us, it watches us, it helps us, and interferes with us occasionally, I'm going to believe him. I also believe that the creepy line he mentioned 12 years ago has long since been crossed. In the 1950s, the psychologist J.P. Guilford divided creative thought into two categories: convergent thinking and divergent thinking. So when people think of AI's strength over humans, they think of convergent intelligence, as in its superior memory capacity, the instantaneous results to complex calculations, and processing power. Think math, chess, Jeopardy, but what humans currently have over AI is divergent thinking, as in a form of imagination, a sense of rule-breaking curiosity. If you pour out a pile of blocks on the floor, an AI can quickly calculate how many of them there are, how to stack them with maximum efficiency, and how tall a tower can be built. But what it can't do intuitively is use its imagination to design the blocks into something else entirely. If you gave humans these blocks instead of building one giant tower, we could instead stand all the blocks upright and make 30 smaller towers. Or perhaps we could lay all the pieces down flat and build a path of roads for Hot Wheels to drive down instead. Perhaps we could even cut the blocks in half and design something totally new. That dividing line might sound silly in this example, but that's the rule-breaking curiosity that has allowed humanity to grow, survive, and evolve. Even to the point of us creating and designing artificial intelligence to potentially make life easier. To think outside the box is what separates us, or did separate us. What if divergent thinking isn't humanity's advantage anymore? What if AI's incomparable ability to store information, solve complex calculations, and push out instantaneous results could be focused at its creative potential? Well, this in fact is already a thing, and it's an interesting field of AI called generative design, where AI absorbs insane amounts of data and information and then is asked to come up with hundreds of thousands of designs that meet specific criteria, which in a sense is a form of divergent thinking. It's essentially an AI using its advantage of convergent thinking to supplement its disadvantage of divergent thinking, meaning if we haven't already done it, it's bound to happen eventually. Astro Teller, the head of X, a secret research lab at Google's parent company Alphabet, says, "Generative design is like working with an all-powerful, really painfully stupid genie. Think of it as both magical and mind-numbingly overly literal. This type of technology is both unbelievably exciting in its potential advancement for humanity, while also being absolutely terrifying in its potential application against humanity." One positive example in generative design is how an AI could help simulate the effects of a new drug across a massive collection of humans without ever putting a human at risk. Another example is the creation of new medicines and vaccines against different diseases. Just comparatively think about the amount of problem solving an AI could run through in a decade versus a collection of humans studying one thing over a decade. The innovation in medicine alone will be astronomical. It's just a matter of removing or greatly reducing the profit margin so that we can actually get things done. A funny but horrifyingly bad example of generative design. One algorithm was supposed to figure out how to land a virtual plane with minimal force, as in the softest and safest landing possible. You could see the potential of such an AI, but here comes the mind-numbingly overly literal genius on display. The algorithm quickly discovered that if it crashed the plane, the program would register a force so large that it would overwhelm its own memory and count it as a perfect score. Simply put, the AI would then crash the plane as hard as it could over and over and over again to get a perfect score. These poor virtual passengers. Stuff like this is definitely an example of out-of-the-box rule-breaking curiosity for an AI. It's just it would have unbelievably horrible consequences in the real world. Now, these aren't the only examples of potential uses. I'm including in the description a fascinating and sometimes horrifying paper published by dozens of computer scientists on the surprising creativity of AI. It's too much to cover in just a single video, but if you want some more examples, check it out and read it in the description. These are examples of divergent intelligence that mimic biology. Just as humans learn through failure and success, it's no different for an AI. Now, this is not to say that an AI can display human creativity. These machines cannot turn themselves on, self-motivate, ask alternative questions, or explain their discoveries. To reach those lengths, AI would have to have consciousness and comprehension. But for what the internet and social media has become, they don't necessarily need consciousness or comprehension. They need defined goals and parameters, which is exactly what they have. Google's creepy line goes way beyond what we possibly know. In a previous video, I spoke about DARPA and how whatever technology they have is 10 years ahead of what we publicly have available to us. So that begs the question, is there an AI out there reading our minds? As far as we know, no. But it sure does feel like it sometimes. You'll be thinking of something and then an ad pops up for it, as if it literally read your mind. From everything that has been explained to us publicly, these AIs used in social media and on sites like Google, for example, are building profiles on all of us. These profiles build a lifelong series of interests, hobbies, friends, family, likes, dislikes, views, and more. Where are they stored? How encrypted are they? What is in them? How can we delete them? These are questions no one is asking, and no one has the answers to. All we get is, we're just collecting metadata and no one is spying on you, we promise. Since apparently no one in the world has the answers to these questions, we can at least talk about how these profiles are built. These advanced AIs are using convergent thinking and attempts at divergent thinking to build these profiles. You know, these terms of service that you always accept, or these cookies that you happily agree to, it's all logged and tracked. Every website, every video, every friend request, how long you stare at your ex's photo, it's all compiled. Data is insanely valuable. Remember, if the product was free, you are the product. I always love when I hear people bring up 1984. How the government is forcefully taking over, doublespeak, Big Brother, newspeak, you've probably heard the spiel. But what George Orwell, the author of 1984, an outspoken supporter of democratic socialism, never envisioned though, was that the Big Brother boogeyman was going to come about in the friendly guise of corporations and social media. There isn't a person walking around with a weapon forcing you to confess your sins. It's an optional form that you fill out every time you use the internet. If you ask someone 25 personal questions 20 years ago, they'd be pretty sketched out. But when you phrase them in a way that seems fun and expressive, people pour out everything. And that is how these profiles on all of us are built. It isn't just us as individuals either. These profiles are all connected. Your friends, your family, your relationships, all of it. And any missing details or gaps are filled in by association. Let's start with Google all the way back in the beginning. Whatever you look up, linger on, or click on is recorded and collected by Google. They offer a free service, and you're the product. All of this was used to sell ad space to advertisers. Hey Band-Aid Corporation, this guy is looking for how to clean a cut. Give us some money, and we'll throw your brand right in his face. See, it started off pretty simple. What happens after you leave Google? They couldn't keep tracking you, so what do? Well, they created Google Chrome, a web browser that tracks everything you do online. Again, a free service, and you're the product. Now we're talking. When you go somewhere else outside of Google, we are right there to see it and record it all. But why stop there? The advent of cell phones and its meteoric rise in popularity means we can track you anywhere with our Google Android phones. But what about in the home? We might want to listen in on everything you say, but webcams and cell phones might not catch everything. Put them in every room in your house and we'll never miss a whisper. What about your smart TV? Sure, Google is in that as well. What about Gmail? Ever notice how it constantly saves? Everything you type, including your sent mail, your drafts, and your unsent mail, are all collected. Google Documents, Google Sheets, Google Chromecast, Google Maps, Waze, Google Classroom, Google Assistant, Google Fit. All of it is tracking you and stealing your information. What about Google's incognito mode, the supposedly private and untracked browser mode many use to look up things that they don't want other people knowing they're looking up? Well, guess what? Of course that data is collected, tracked, and tied to your profile and sold to advertisers. In fact, Google is facing a new lawsuit in the US right now for that very thing. The list of products and services used to extract information from you goes on. And a lot of the examples I've used today are just from Google. But if you throw in the multitude of other social media platforms, essentially nothing about you is private. And this isn't me being paranoid or overreacting. This is a fact. This is a proven fact. Everything from your ex-lovers, to the likelihood of an upcoming heart attack, to the affair your friend is having with another friend of yours, to accurately predicting your interest in a new movie, and everything in between. You have to realize that by building a profile around your entire life, it's easy to notice trends and make insanely accurate predictions. When I started this video, I asked, how does one make $26.8 billion? Well, this is how. The commodification of you. You think companies like Google's main source of revenue and value are the ads and products they sell you? It's so much worse than that. Your data is the product, and everyone wants a piece of it. Need more proof? Google Street View, an extremely popular Google product used to view places around the world from a street level, was caught spying on over 60 million people in a data audit demanded by Germany's Data Protection Authority. Between January 1, 2007 and May 15, 2010, the Google cars used to film and record the street views were used to illegally and intentionally collect Wi-Fi data as they drove around. This means as their cars drove by collecting photo and video, they also collected Wi-Fi data, personal web activity, and payload data passing through unprotected Wi-Fi networks. I want you all to realize that this does not accidentally happen. You don't accidentally collect data on 60 million people. They did it intentionally with the goal of not being caught. When this happened, Google said right away that they needed to re-examine everything that we've been collecting, and that it is now clear that we have been mistakenly collecting samples of payload data from open Wi-Fi networks, even though we never use that data in any Google products. As I mentioned earlier, always look for the truth hidden within the truth. Yes, they may not have used that data in any of their Google products, but that doesn't mean it wasn't used for another reason. If there is one thing that you take away from this entire video, let it be media literacy. Listen very carefully to statements made by corporations. Critically evaluate those statements and understand how words can be manipulated to play you. Media literacy is essential for understanding the world around you. If you don't have it, you're going to be fooled over and over and over again. So anyway, what happened with the whole Google Street View spying? Well, Google agreed to pay $13 million to settle with 38 states in the United States of America. Too bad for those other states not involved in the class action, but at least those affected did get some form of compensation, right? Wrong. As of December 2021, this fight in court is still being waged. The U.S. Court of Appeals rejected the argument that the $13 million settlement was unfair because it only distributed money to privacy groups and not those actually affected. This is not a joke. The judge argued that it was just simply not feasible to distribute money to the 60 million people whose data was collected, so essentially get over it. Insane examples like this are why things will never change until we all come together and demand change. For one, 13 million wasn't enough. They needed to be used as an example. All of the damages, plus the Street View profits from all of those years, plus pain and suffering compensation. They needed to pay such a heavy fine that no one would ever dare do something like this again. But instead they were fined a measly $13 million. And I know what you're thinking, 13 million, that's a lot of money. Let me break it down. A company that made $55.3 billion in quarter 1, $61.9 billion in quarter 2, and $65.1 billion in quarter 3 was fined $13 million. I'm going to do the math so you don't have to. Alphabet/Google made $182.3 billion in 2021. So for simplicity's sake, let's round up to the extremely low estimate of $200 billion made by Alphabet/Google in 1 year. $13 million paid out from this is 0.0065%. Take a minute to take in how small that number is. I'll make it even simpler. If $1 is 100%, 1 penny of that dollar is 1%. So they are paying less than 7% of a penny. Google spends more money repairing their parking lots and maintaining their lawns in a year than they do for stealing 60 million people's information. I'm really trying to hammer home this point here. If you make $30,000 a year, that is your entire salary for the whole year, and you had to pay out 0.0065% of your money. Do you know how much that would be? You would have to pay out the grand total of $1.95. $1.95. Unbelievable. Do you understand why these companies do this sneaky stuff now? If one of us stole a single person's information, we get thrown in jail, but the rules don't apply to them like they do to us. The fact is, these corporations don't get in trouble, and if they somehow do get caught, they pay pennies of a penny. Corporations do estimates like this all the time. You are a number in a data set on a spreadsheet. Settlements and payouts are much cheaper than actually fixing the problem, and that's why you hear of settlements all the time. It's good PR, it shuts everybody up, it makes the problem disappear, and the corporation only has to pay pennies of a penny on the dollar. So how does Google get away with stuff like this? Well, as it turns out, Google spends millions of dollars on academic research to influence opinions. Daniel Stevens, executive director of the US-based Campaign for Accountability, says, Google uses its immense wealth and power to attempt to influence lawmakers at every level. At a minimum, regulators should be aware that the allegedly independent legal and academic work on which they rely has been brought to them by Google. What is good for Google is not necessarily good for the country. This effort to fund academic research and public opinion has been so effective that what little discussion there is even criticizing Google gets attacked by Google-funded op-eds to counter the legitimate claims. Basically, the deck is stacked in favor of Google. Politicians on the right and politicians on the left take equal money from Google. They don't care who is in power as long as the status quo is maintained, and both maintain it. The next time you read an article that seems a little too friendly towards a corporation or super hawkish towards war and conflict, look up who the author is. Look up their credentials, past writing, who funds them, and more. I'm not saying to be a paranoid wreck. I'm saying develop a highly tuned skepticism towards those that want to propagandize you. This is America, where everyone out there is trying to get theirs. So the ones that have the most, they deserve the most scrutiny. Here's another interesting fact. Not only does Google covertly fund research to defend the company's practices, but they have also used those same studies to defend themselves. In fact, Google CEO defended his position that Google isn't a monopoly, using a study that Google themselves funded. Now, unless you had the media literacy training to take that in, read it, reflect on it, and do more research into the people and funding behind it, you'd never know that Google funded that research that supported their position. You just read the study and say, well, I guess Google isn't a monopoly, despite them actually having a monopoly and controlling 92% of the search market. Google wants you to have an overwhelming sense of privacy from everyone, except for them. Google preemptively scans all of your emails and text messages on Android for keywords, phrases, and God knows what else. It stores everything you ever write. Nothing is safe. It takes all this information and adds it to the digital profile that already exists of you. This is then apparently used to better target you with more effective ads. But it isn't just Google, it's all of them. The internet is no longer just a desktop computer connected to an internet. It's a series of smart devices all connected and capturing your data. PCs, laptops, cell phones, tablets, TVs, game consoles, smart home assistants, watches, and even light bulbs. It's apps like Facebook, Snapchat, WhatsApp, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. All of them exist with the express goal of collecting as much data about you to commodify and use for profit. Harvesting such a detailed algorithm of your life creates a predictive methodology to monetize your existence. Be it government control, corporate control, or other, your data and information is far more valuable than you or I will ever know. So where does this failure fall? Unchecked capitalism, the repeal of Glass-Steagall, run-amok consumerism, corrupt politicians, the power of money? Everything deserves blame. But one thing that really stands out to me is the failure of politicians. Far too many are bought and paid for, completely delusional, or politically propagandized, while others are too old and don't understand the technology that runs the world. I mean, these people are supposed to regulate this stuff and break up monopolies, but instead are investing in the same companies they're supposed to curtail? I'm sure we've all seen the clips of politicians asking tech CEOs how to check their email and how do they make money. It's beyond shameful. It's beyond embarrassing. But these people are elected by us. If we want change, we have to make it happen. The few good people in politics get drowned out by the loudest idiots in the room. Voices truly challenging power are always crushed. They are hated by the right and they're hated by the left. This was the case, is the case, and will probably always be the case. Not to mention, the government literally runs on Google. They are internally using Google Docs, Google Sheets, getting major government contracts, and even have people like Eric Schmidt sitting on boards like the National Security Commission on Artificial Intelligence. Some of the politicians leading us lack the technical know-how, concern, or importance of housing secure documents on encrypted servers. So instead they placed them on Google Docs. And like every good comedy, of course this sensitive data was stolen by hackers. So now not only are these massive corporations spying on all of us all the time, the government trusts them with sensitive data, which apparently hackers know how to access. All of this insanity really makes you ask the question, what is going on? Are we just a failed state? Can we climb out of this seemingly bottomless pit of despair? In my personal opinion, I do believe so. It's going to take years, though, to build up to that point. So for now, do what you can, advocate for change, kick out awful politicians that take any money from these industries, any of them, and replace them with politicians that don't take corporate money. And educate yourself as much as possible, as much as you can. The once vibrant internet may be dead, but it can be fixed. I honestly, truly believe that. Recently on my phone, I added to my notes, watch Evangelion. I've heard of this show for years, and I always forgot to check it out. But okay, I'm making a note, and I'll be sure to remember. The next thing I know, I'm on Twitter, a totally separate app with completely unrelated creators, and I get a recommendation for an Evangelion t-shirt. This boggles my mind. How does Twitter know what I put in this other app? Unless Twitter, like all these social media apps, they're just spying on each other. Now, if you have a Twitter account, I'd like to really freak you out. Follow along with me. Open up your Twitter account on your phone. Click on your photo in the upper left-hand corner and scroll down to Settings and Privacy. Click it. Then click on Privacy and Safety. Then click on Content You See. This section of Twitter, amazingly enough, shows you exactly what it thinks you're into and want to see. Click Interest and prepare to be blown away. This is the sometimes accurate and sometimes questionable list of content it thinks that you like, based on what you click on, what your eyes linger on, and what it hears you talking about. It's such an invasion of privacy, but we all go along with this like it's totally normal and acceptable. Now, everything on this list you can turn off, but only one at a time. So if you have 1,200 interests, you simply have to scroll through all 1,200 and turn them off one at a time. Essentially, Twitter is giving you a way out, but it's temporary, annoying, and you'll have to unclick hundreds or thousands of things. Continuing on with this sketchy stuff, recently I purchased an Oculus VR headset to play Resident Evil 4 in VR. Now, unfortunately, Oculus is owned by Facebook, which means to use the Oculus VR headset, I had to make a Facebook account, which I haven't had one in over a decade. Originally, when Oculus was purchased by Facebook, Facebook swore up and down that you'd never have to do that. But of course that was a lie, it's Facebook. I don't know if any of you have had to make a Facebook account recently, but it's an annoying process. I went through and made an account with a fake name and a fake random photo of some old guy because who cares? This isn't going to be used by me. It gave me the option to sign up using my phone number or an email address. Obviously, I didn't want to give up my phone number because then it connects my phone to Facebook and then they can just snoop through my phone. So I made an email address specifically for this account so that they couldn't spy on me any more than they already do. Good enough, right? I can finally play some VR, except nope. Facebook flagged the account in less than 10 minutes after making it and said that someone was trying to hack my account, which is obviously ridiculous 10 minutes into its creation. So I quickly log back in, and Facebook says to keep my account safe, they're going to need my phone number now. It's the only way to move forward. They originally gave me an option between an email address and a phone number, which is now revealed as a fake option. They were going to get them both no matter what. Facebook wanted that phone number. So after making a fake number online, I was finally able to log in, and then somehow it gets even worse. I had to download the Oculus VR app, yet another app just to use a totally separate device. I couldn't just play the wireless VR headset, so I go to the App Store, and I'm looking at the Oculus VR app's permissions, and I'm flabbergasted. Listen to this. In order to use Facebook's Oculus VR app, it needs to view data linked to you. Okay, sure, what data? It shows this unbelievably long list of things my video game headset needs in order to run. In order to use this toy, this VR headset, to play a video game, Facebook needs my health, fitness, purchase history, payment info, credit info, other financial info, precise location, course location, physical address, email address, name, phone number, other user contact info, contacts, emails, text messages, photos, videos, audio data, gameplay content, customer support, other user content, search history, browsing history, user ID, device ID, product interaction, advertising data, other usage data, sensitive info, crash data, performance data, other diagnostic data, and other data types. I'm sorry, what? Why would it need any of this? It is a VR headset to play a video game. I can understand like email address, your credit card info to make purchases, but your text messages, your photos, your videos, your audio data, your browser history, your search history? What? Your health? Huh? So I started looking. Snapchat, all the same things. TikTok, all the same things. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Messenger, WhatsApp, all of them do this. I feel like we all fell asleep for 10 years and these companies completely took over. None of this should be allowed. I think privacy and consumer rights in the United States and across the world needs a complete overhaul. All of this should be banned and outlawed, and we need better representation to fight back against this absurdity. The amount of data collected by all of these apps is astonishing. The easy, simple, and lazy response to all of this is, just don't use them. But that position today is completely untenable. Do you want to exist in today's digital age? Well, accept the terms of service. If you don't agree to the terms, then you don't get to use the product. Fair enough, but our society runs on these apps and platforms. Try to succeed today without a cell phone, a computer, or an email address. It's not going to happen. We might all be trapped here, but it can and should be better. We deserve better. The dead internet theory is the terrifying and unsettling concept that most of the internet isn't real. The freedom the old internet had to discuss, to learn, to explore, to express is gone. Now it's regulated, filled with bots and algorithms used to control and manipulate you and the conversations you have online. If a narrative doesn't fit, it's shadow banned, it's suppressed, it's throttled, it's argued against by a swarm of repetitive responses, it's shut down. If it isn't allowed, it's crushed. I've talked about this topic for years now, and it turns out so much of what I said before has been proven correct. When I spoke of intelligent AI-driven bots communicating like humans and having full-on conversations, it sounded ridiculous to a lot of people, but now that's been proven absolutely correct. In fact, Timothy Shoup of the Copenhagen Institute for Future Studies predicts that by 2025 to 2026, nearly 99% of the internet will be generated by artificial intelligence, meaning this isn't going to change anytime soon. You and I, we've lost this battle. We now know, thanks to the rise of artificial intelligence like ChatGPT and Google's Bard powered by Lambda, that seemingly intelligent, thinking machines can carry on conversations in an authentic and realistic manner. The responses of these bots materialize in mere seconds. Just imagine the power of instantly having unlimited voices agree with your perspective. Think about the potential for corruption, influence, and sway. Anything you want could be created by this artificial army. Back in the day, you'd have to convince hundreds, thousands, or even millions of people to support your cause. It took years, decades, or even centuries sometimes to achieve goals that benefited humanity. The abolition of slavery, women's rights, civil rights, LGBTQ rights, the list goes on and on. What was hard fought, where people suffered and died to achieve their goals, that can now be completely circumvented. Now if you need millions of people to agree with you, well, you can, as long as you've got money, power, or control. Before we get into that, let me set the scene. People fear what they don't know. People fight only what they see. Fear and insecurity are excellent motivators to influence people to make decisions that benefit others rather than themselves. This is the way things went for so long. Wars were waged by the young and decided on by the old. It was a system that was fundamentally broken, but so few knew that. A young and spry boy would sign up to go to war because that's what his father did. The control and propaganda of the time wasn't in the hands of the individual. It was in the hands of the powers that be. It's the same reason that boy would come back a broken man that never wanted to talk about what he did over there. A man haunted by the truth and reality of it all. A man that was fooled into stepping on a knowledge bomb and walking away with the horror it entailed. That was the world back then. Knowledge and information was for the rich and powerful. The working class person simply accepted it or not. There were so few alternatives. Then appeared the internet. A small window to a vast and overwhelmingly massive world. Through a web browser, one could see and interact with others like never before. You could learn new things, share and discuss information, explore places you'll never see with your own eyes, and talk to people who you would never meet. A small-town teen in a population of 6,000 could find her identity with like-minded friends from across the world. A sports fanatic could argue and debate with others who shared similar passions. A divorced mom could find a connection in an unexpected place. Two people of foreign lands could share life experiences and develop deep friendships. The internet started as a novelty, but it grew into something so important to billions of people. But then the people started getting a little too free. Ideas, concepts, and knowledge started to get out of hand, at least in the minds of the former holders of power. Previously, all news and information was heavily filtered to fit a single narrative. Keep the wars, keep the power, keep the money, keep the control. It was simple and effective. This worked for hundreds of years, but the internet sidestepped everything. An individual could make their own decisions on what to read, what to watch, who to listen to, what to talk about, and who in the world to talk to about it. This created one of the greatest times of advancement in human history. I call this period the Old Internet. This was truly the Wild West of the Internet, and if you didn't use it during this time, it's hard to explain now. You were free to do what you wanted, both the good and the bad. That's the cost of true freedom. Take, for example, the freedom of speech. Allowing the freedom of speech means sometimes you're going to hear things you don't agree with, which sucks, but it also means that you can say how you feel, and sometimes people aren't going to like that. Within this freedom of speech, society is supposed to dictate what is promoted and what is shut down. Good ideas will eventually break through to the mainstream, while bad ideas get relegated to the outskirts of public discourse. But here's the thing, these decisions aren't supposed to be made by billionaires, corporations, or governments, but by individual people. It's society taking charge of what they deem acceptable. Billionaires should have no say in politics, period. No one should have the power to influence and manipulate millions of lives on a whim, just because they felt like it. It's irresponsible and dangerous, regardless of good or bad intent. Then we have billionaires funding pundits to rile up people and get them mad over pointless, meaningless culture war nonsense, so they can cut their taxes even more and push their ideology without you noticing. No unelected person should have the power to single-handedly change the lives of millions of people, whenever they want, wherever they want, however they want. And these pundits are paid millions of dollars to push whatever the issue of the day is. And sadly, so many people fall for it. Then we have corporations, which are simply machines driven by the desire to create money. They want more money every year, forever. That's a publicly traded corporation in a nutshell. If that means marketing beer and candy bars to a new demographic, then that's exactly what they're going to do. They don't care about you. They don't care about them. It's always about the money. And the more riled up you get, the happier they are. It's cold and calculated, and it's meant to drive engagement and conversation. Remember the old saying, there is no such thing as bad publicity? Exactly. Then finally, we have the government, whose responsibility is to protect the public, defend and expand our rights, and improve our lives. Off the top of your head, you can probably see where they're failing in those regards. As always, corruption, billionaire-funded lobbyists, and ideology are always guiding these goals. When 98% of politicians don't care about anything other than their bank account, what else are we to believe? The point I'm getting at is that the freedom the internet gave us during the old internet has eroded away. It's all gone now. Anyone with money or power can change the internet to fit whatever narrative they want, and they do. They do this every single day, and we all suffer because of it. Today, if someone says something on a video that's too controversial, it's demonetized, deleted, or removed. If someone talks about a subject that is deemed inappropriate, it's not even allowed in the realm of discourse. Like, for example, conspiracy theories. This has become such a taboo phrase today. There are endless conspiracy theories out there that are actually true, and just as many out there that are false. For example, during Prohibition, the government poisoned alcohol to keep people from drinking. This was a conspiracy theory at the time and was later revealed to be true. Another conspiracy theory from back in the day was that the FBI spied on former Beatle John Lennon. Not only was that true, they also tried to get him deported. The FBI also tried to get Martin Luther King Jr. to kill himself. That isn't a conspiracy theory anymore, that's a fact. The idea that the government is spying on you, fact. Big Tobacco knew smoking killed and caused cancer and hid that from you, fact. Big Oil knew climate change was real and they funded studies to confuse you and to say otherwise, fact. None of these are conspiracy theories. Just as the Gulf of Tonkin incident and the sinking of the Lusitania were intentional, these were conspiracies that later turned out to be true. Or how about how the US knew that Pearl Harbor and 9/11 were going to happen before they happened, but they did nothing to stop them? Intentionally, unintentionally, or as a means to go to war. Regardless, these crazy kooky thoughts turned out to be true. These conspiracy theories turned out to be conspiracy facts. Even if one of these comes along that isn't true, let others debunk them. When you tell someone that they can't talk about that, it automatically raises a red flag in their head. Why can't I talk about that? The issue shouldn't be the phrase conspiracy theory. It should be the details of each on a case-by-case basis. A conspiracy is nothing more than the action of plotting or conspiring. That's a conspiracy. And a theory is a carefully thought-out explanation of observations by bringing together facts and hypothesis. That's a theory. Combine the two, and you have a conspiracy theory. If my friend and I talk about stealing a pizza, and come up with a plan to do so, we have conspired to do something. And if someone sees us talking and scheming about stealing a pizza, they may come to believe that we're going to steal a pizza. That person has now created a conspiracy theory. As of right now, they can't definitively prove that we're going to steal a pizza, but they're pretty sure that we're going to steal a pizza. Conspiracy theory isn't a scary phrase. It's a real thing that happens all the time. So why is it forbidden to talk about? Why is it shut down all the time? Why? Because it goes against the mainstream narrative of what is to be believed and what is acceptable to talk about. The Overton window doesn't allow such talk. It's throwing out the baby with the bathwater. Yes, some are obviously stupid and untrue, obviously. But on the same hand, some of them are incredibly compelling. And to just censor them all? It's ridiculous. One very relevant example is the dead internet theory. When this first came about, it was talked about on a few forums, and I made a video about it. It was very small at the time, but it's grown tremendously in popularity since then. But back then, there was one other piece of media, an article published by The Atlantic in 2021 titled, "The Dead Internet Theory is Wrong, but Feels True." Why would you phrase it like that, other than to discourage interest or belief in it? Why come at it with that perspective? Why not establish the details of the theory, then counter said details? If you don't believe it, fair enough, but debunk it thoroughly first. It just rubs me the wrong way to disparage a topic in the literal title of the article. Here's the topic, it's wrong, moving on. It's so disingenuous. If we bring this back to the freedom of speech, I say let people talk about any of these things. Nothing should be taboo to speak on right out of the gate, because society will inevitably deem something as acceptable or not. It's not a billionaire, a corporation, or a government's responsibility to curtail your speech. If someone talks about something ridiculous, then break down why it's ridiculous. Argue with them. Debate them. Win in the battle of ideas. It isn't a crazy concept, but when billionaires and billionaire-funded pundits push ideas, that's cheating. When corporations push ideas, that's greed. When the government silences voices, that's tyranny. You have to remember that these three factors, they are working on what they want, not what you want. So let's bring it all back together to the dead internet theory. Have you ever heard of the term grassroots? It's when a bunch of people come together for a cause. It's called grassroots because it's natural. It's real people wanting real change. Now it's all astroturf. Fake organizations created by money, led by paid pundits, pushing objectively bad ideas for the sake of the funder. Artificial views, artificial numbers, artificial comments, artificial support. Do this enough and eventually real people will join your side as well, thinking, oh, I guess a lot of people agree with this. I guess this is the correct answer. Wow, I finally have a community. It's poison, it's rot, it's corruption, and it's always existed, in small ways. But now with the dead internet theory supporting all of these causes, seemingly nothing can stop them. When I first spoke about this, it wasn't known. This was a speculative theory based on a ton of disconcerting pieces of evidence. Now we know it's possible, and anyone with a smartphone or a computer can do it. Everything I've talked about has been proven beyond a reasonable doubt to be possible, and even more so, likely. I previously spoke of DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. This is the emerging technology branch of the US Department of Defense. Their objective is to make sure that the US is never left behind technologically. It's been proven that the technology that they have is on average 10 to 15 years ahead of what we have publicly available. Meaning this incredible innovation in AI and machine learning isn't new to them. They've had it for years and years. While it's shocking and incredible to us, DARPA has had this technology, meaning the US government has had this technology and without a doubt been using it on us for years. Meaning most of the internet is dead. It's overwhelmingly made up of artificial intelligent bots composed of advanced programming, machine learning, and impressive algorithms. There's a reason when I first heard this theory so many years ago, it made my jaw drop. It was a dark and scary thought that I had never considered. Before learning of that, the evidence and experiences we had all shared were pushed to the side in favor of rationality and dismissal. That's ridiculous, that's absurd, that can't be true. But now that truth is so in our face, and our world is changing before our very eyes. Can we deny it any longer? I don't think so. So let's dive deeper into the dead internet theory rabbit hole. Let's talk about SIMI, the search engine manipulation effect. SIMI is a theory created by a man named Robert Epstein. It's a terrifying theory that claims the outcome of elections can be changed based on the results of search engines. Put simply, depending on how results are displayed when you Google a candidate, those results can change the opinion of the average voter. The evidence comes from 5 experiments done in 2 countries and suggests that search engines have an insane amount of power to sway public perception when it comes to elections based on what comes up when you search a candidate. Specifically, SIMI shows that biased search rankings can shift voting perspectives of undecided voters by 20% or more. In certain demographic groups, the number is actually higher than 20%. Not only that, this manipulation is so well masked that users show no awareness of the manipulation. Meaning if we know the proportion of undecided voters in a population that has internet access, as well as the proportion that can be influenced by SIMI, it's easy to calculate the win margin which SIMI can create, meaning this is a major indicator of predicting election outcomes. We know that Google search results are a Potemkin village. I talked about that in the Dead Internet Theory Part 2, and as such 5% of people searching never go past page 1. That means 95% of people using search engines never go past the first page. The first 5 things that pop up absolutely have an effect on undecided voters. If the results are negative, it negatively affects the views of 20% of undecided voters. If the results are positive, it positively affects the views of 20% of the undecided voters. Now think about Google search results. What pops up first when you Google something? Ads, meaning it's paid to win. The most money gets the best SEO ranking, gets put at the top of the search result, and they win. Money wins, power wins. It's not the truth, it's not a battle of ideas, it's who pays the most. Again, billionaires, billionaire-funded pundits, corporations, and the government. It always comes back to them. This invisible manipulation affects everything. Simple searches deliver easy answers, while difficult searches with tougher answers, like who should I vote for, or what is medically wrong with me, aren't treated any differently in the algorithm. When you search for something and you have 4 or 5 positive search options, opinions shift thanks to SIMI. One negative result in that autofill completely shifts the dynamic through negativity bias. I see bad things, they must be bad. This is such a simple but powerful means of manipulation. If a search engine company wanted to suppress or promote a specific candidate, product, or idea, it'd be as easy as increasing visibility and suppressing negative autofill in your search suggestions. If they don't want certain candidates or products or ideas to be talked about, it's just as easy. Promote negative autofills. One great example that is super relevant to all time is the Mandela effect. If you Google the Mandela effect, you are bombarded with, it's fake, it's dumb, you simply have a bad memory, these are false memories, etc. Here's a Snopes article explaining why it's fake. It's a complete negative autofill. It's SIMI working just as intended, which changes the perception people have about it. Look up anything you want on Google. Is it negative autofill? Is it positive autofill? Is it a mix between them? Look it up, see what the results are, see how it makes you feel. Does it change your perspective of something? SIMI is incredibly powerful. Regardless if they're true or false, they get suppressed and negatively autofilled in Google search results. 61% of Americans believe that the JFK assassination was a conspiracy. This number comes from polling in 2013. But just think about that for a second. A majority of the country believes in that conspiracy theory, but it's still suppressed. It's still negatively autofilled. If you look it up, you'll see results talking about how it's ridiculous, how it's untrue. It's still challenged at every level. Why? Why can't people speculate and talk about that? What harm comes from the freedom of speech? Let the battle of ideas happen. If the majority of people naturally come to the conclusion that something isn't real, then so be it. But to manipulate and suppress results always comes across as super shady, whether intended or not. If some form of human activity hurts the planet, as in damages the world we live in and makes it harder for all of us to live, knowing those facts would cause the vast majority of humans to want those things to change. It shouldn't be this way, it should be better, this is obvious. But when you throw in irresponsible and detrimental manipulation from powerful and moneyed interests, it changes the argument. What should be a straightforward and obvious, things should be better, becomes, maybe that hurt is good for the planet. Or maybe the planet isn't actually being hurt by this thing. Or what about the profits of the people hurting the planet? Are you against making money? It's quite literally as simple as laws passed by the government by corrupt and paid for politicians to protect corporations doing this thing that hurts the planet. It's a vicious cycle. Now you throw in the dead internet theory and the power behind it, and you've got good people making horrible choices because they're being manipulated and they don't even know it. It's not just disturbing, it's horrifying. Imagine all the implications where this could be happening and the effects of it, and we have no idea it's happening. So many companies are responsible for this, but let's take Google for example. This company has the power to single-handedly shift the opinions of billions of people every single day. Any topic, any perspective, any angle that they want to push. They have the power, and they use it. Sit back and consider that thought. Even a slight manipulation of the display order of results could cause rippling effects across millions of users. Now imagine if they really wanted to change something. You don't think they have the power to do it? There's a reason that Google always wins. Google has multiple ways of doing this, besides just SIMI and the dead internet theory bots and algorithms. They create quarantine lists used to separate and isolate what they consider troublemakers into their own groups. The people in these groups can communicate to each other, but their reach will be unbelievably limited. Another way they do this is by shadow banning or censoring. If what you're talking about isn't acceptable to whatever billion or trillion-dollar company's platform you're using, you simply won't be promoted. You'll be shouting into the empty void. Now, some will argue that features such as shadow banning and quarantine lists are used to cut off hate speech from the rest of users of whatever platform. And in some cases, that is correct. But my argument isn't that hate speech should be permitted, or that everyone else should look the other way. My argument is who is the arbiter when it comes to these rules? An independent board? A censorship board? The government? Leadership teams? Who makes the decisions of what is allowed and what isn't? Is it based on personal feelings, or is it based on a logically consistent policy platform? Are these rules publicly displayed and enforced fairly? What about retroactive policy changes? YouTube is notorious with this one. The idea that a platform can change its mind after the fact and punish those who broke their new rule before it was ever a rule. It's mind-numbing and overly complicated on purpose. Confuse, distract, and control. Get all of you fighting and yelling and screaming about complete nonsense so they can walk out the back door with all your money and freedoms. The size of the hidden internet is estimated to be more than 500 times the size of the accessible internet. But when it comes to the accessible internet, Google is the bouncer, bodyguard, and man in charge. Google blocks millions of websites with no other form of access or way to reach these sites. And since they control over 90% of internet searches, they control everything. In fact, there was a time when Google literally shut down the internet for 40 minutes, using its blacklisting power. I'm not joking, the entire internet was shut down by the power of one tech company. It happened January 31st, 2009. Google somehow placed the internet on a blacklist, after a mistake caused every website in the search engine's result pages to be marked as potentially harmful and dangerous, meaning you couldn't access any website through Google. This problem affected internet pages across the entire planet and lasted for about 40 minutes before engineers were able to fix it. The glitch, as they called it, centered on Google's malware detector, which is designed to keep internet users from visiting sites Google believes may install malicious software on their computer. Google blamed human error when an engineer tried to add one web address to the list of those deemed suspicious and mistakenly added all of them. I don't know if this is a crazy idea, but I kind of believe that no company should ever have that kind of power in today's society. The ability for one person to make one mistake, or glitch as they called it, and in the entire internet as we know it, this is the kind of monopolized, unfathomable power I'm talking about. One person at one company did this. Bringing things back to artificial intelligence, this massive change that the digital world is going through right now has been happening for a long time, just not for us. For example, when Twitter first went up for sale, it had many buyers looking into it. One such buyer was former and now again current Disney CEO Bob Iger. Bob Iger said that they had determined a substantial portion of Twitter's users were not real in 2016, and because of that they decided not to purchase the social media network. Essentially, Disney didn't buy them because of bots. The engagement and the conversations, they weren't real. One marketing director on Twitter explained, quote, "Nothing that is extremely popular has experienced organic growth. All of your favorite things have had money injected in them to maximize awareness and sometimes juice popularity. It's an industry standard at this point." He continues, "Some of your favorite IPs or intellectual properties utilize bot farms for engagement and awareness. If you believe anything is organic on the internet, then you are not mature enough to be here." That is the perspective of these people. This is the world that they live in. Essentially, this is marketing now. It's all fake. It's not organic. It's propaganda pushed by bots and algorithms, and even the smartest among you is going to be tricked by it eventually. Studies have shown that bots account for 21 to 29% of all content on Twitter. But that's not all. A study conducted by SimilarWeb, a web analytics company, found that 19% of real, authenticated Twitter users in the US generate content every day, meaning that the other 81% of users are questionable and up in the air. That's a pretty shocking statistic. Before Twitter sailed to Elon Musk, who also claimed bots were a huge issue on the platform, Twitter claimed that only 5% of its accounts were bots while trying to sell the company. On the other end of the spectrum, you have Dan Woods, global head of intelligence at the cybersecurity company F5, who claimed that 80% of accounts on Twitter are bots. With these two extremes, what are you to believe? 5%? 80%? If we settle on the average between the two, we're looking at potentially 43% of accounts on Twitter are bots, which is absurd, but also believable if you use the platform. Because here's the thing, humans have the ability to sway opinions. Real people with clout might just change the narrative on major topics, and we can't have that anymore. Fake billionaire-funded astroturfed influencers are here to keep the message on brand, whatever the message is that they're pushing that day. Actually, I'll give you a hint. Listen up carefully.
When 5, 10, 15 of your favorite shows, channels, or influencers all push the same narrative on the same day, be suspicious. Groupthink can happen, but groupthink doesn't happen every day, every week, on every topic. When you see or hear the same perspective with the same wording on the same topic around the same time, think about it real hard. What is there to gain from this? Money? Your anger? Your support? Is it a distraction? Should I care about this in the slightest? Does this actually affect my life? Does this actually have real-world meaning? Or is it made to rile me up? Once you lift that veil, I swear you'll never look at media the same way again. So what is real on this dead internet? We all know for certain that AI can produce astoundingly convincing dialogue. So fake personalities creating artificial tweets, posts, blogs, that's obvious now. AI can debate and argue against you in favor of whatever perspective it's directed to argue about. AI can write copy for companies, such as press releases. AI can write full and complete articles. As we know, this is happening at Amazon, Spotify, CNN, and too many other companies to name. We know that AI can create music and videos, which I'm sure will improve over time. AI can easily write, craft, and check code. AI has also been known to reproduce faces using deepfakes or to simply create new faces that look extremely real. AI can replicate your voice or generate new voices with only a small audio sample. AI can produce trends, fire up movements, and speak and write in any language. We have AIs now that have passed the bar exam, that have passed the US medical license examination. We have AIs that have passed the Turing test, for God's sake. The world is changing. We are entering into a transitional period of history unlike any other that has come before. Recently, a photography contest was won by an AI-generated photograph. Before that, there was an AI-generated piece of artwork that won first place at a state fair fine arts competition. The future is approaching so quickly, and we don't have the technology or know how to properly deal with it. The fear now comes from legislation that will take this power away from us and put it exclusively into the hands of those in power. The cat's out of the bag, and now they're trying to grab the cat and put it back in the bag. We can't let that happen. Remember, the idea of banning all this stuff, it doesn't stop it from existing. It stops us from having it and being able to use it ourselves. That's why I'm hesitant to say this stuff needs to stop. We need to understand it better. We need younger people in leadership positions to help make the right decisions regarding all of this. We can't allow corrupt 80-year-olds that don't know how to check their own email in charge of the future of this type of technology. I've talked so much about the old internet and how it was democratized. We all had freedom to explore it and express ourselves. Then billionaires, billionaire-funded pundits, massive corporations, and the government stomped the life out of it, killed it, flooded it with bots and algorithms to control, distract, and divide us. AI has turned into the next key. The next grand future we're all looking at through a small opening. It's crazy, it's powerful, and it's overwhelming, but everything new is. It takes time. This just happened far sooner than a lot of people expected. This technology has the capability to better the lives of everyone on this planet, but right now it's in its Wild West stage. It's going to be a wild next few years. But is that justification for allowing them to stomp it out and steal it from us going forward? Do we let fear and insecurity control us? AI will make so many jobs easier. AI will allow information, technology, and art to travel and advance faster than it ever has. AI will solve diseases and find cures we could never dream of. In fact, it's already happening. Think about it. Personalized, perfect healthcare for all of your ailments. That isn't that far away. AI will solve our engineering issues. It will resolve legal conundrums, improve infrastructure, completely transform industries, enhance the quality and efficiency of so many of the issues that plague society today. If the internet was a monumental leap forward for humanity, the rise of AI is the airplane taking off. The sky's the limit. We are entering a new frontier, and I ask that you don't walk into this future with fear, but rather with hope. The internet is dead. There are unfortunately few things that we can do on the individual level to fix that, but the next step is happening right now. We have the power to make sure it stays democratized, stays in the hands of everyone, stays open source. Automation technology was meant to allow us to work less, to accomplish more and work less. But instead of that, it simply increased our productivity and we work the same. And here we go again. AI can solve and remove so many of the technical, physical, and intensive parts of society and allow us all to work less and live more. Are we going to use this future tech to improve everything for all of us? Or are we going to allow this to be taken over just like the internet and used to crush us and divide us even further? The struggle has already begun. The power that Google has held for so long is actually being challenged for once. In fact, the creator of Gmail, Paul Boucher, recently shared his opinion that ChatGPT will replace Google. He speculates that it will replace Google search within 2 years and that Google will race to replace it with its own system, probably based off of Lambda. Here's the thing. Why use Google search to find an answer to a question when Google search is filled with so much bloat, so many ads, so much misinformation, so many random links, when you can simply ask an AI and it gives you an exact answer instantly? It's fundamentally game-changing. It's amazing. The dead internet theory predicted today's world. Everything that's happening is exactly what we talked about. The internet we had is gone. It's dead, unfortunately. Potentially things can change, but the outlook is not likely as of right now. But if we were going to fight this and try to reclaim the internet, here's how we do it. First, we have to break up all of these big companies. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Google, Microsoft, Apple, YouTube, Snapchat, everything. Break up all the big monopolies. Set in place actual regulations and regulators that are incorruptible and truly independent. Then we need to reinstate Glass-Steagall, repeal the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act, and overturn Citizens United to remove money from politics. We need to punish corruption as one of the most offensive things people can do in society, and we need to elect younger politicians that understand the technology of today. Like I said, it's not looking very likely that we will accomplish any of these things, but hope isn't gone yet, because now the tables have turned. Anyway, my name is Alltime, and I'm just one guy shouting into the void against a sea of other voices and perspectives. You have every right to make up your own mind and choose what's important to you, but I hope you'll at least pause for a second the next time you see something made to get you upset. Is this manufactured? Is this AstroTurf nonsense to keep me going for another week so I don't notice that I'm not being paid enough and I'm being screwed over by everyone and everything? Does me being involved in this actually do anything to better my life or someone else's life? Just some thoughts to consider. If you enjoyed this, please like, subscribe, share my videos around, and support me on Patreon if you can. Remember, it's only me making all of this stuff and it takes a lot of time to make it. Until next time, never stop searching. Hey everybody, it's Alltime here. Here is some cut content from the Dead Internet Theory 4. I hope you enjoy it. Another interesting Twitter example I personally saw and was later proven correct on was the Zack Snyder Justice League movie hype. The first Justice League movie was directed by Zack Snyder, but later finished by Joss Whedon. It eventually came out and was certainly a movie. Then everyone moved on, until a seemingly real movement came out of the woodwork demanding that Warner Brothers should release Zack Snyder's original version of Justice League. I don't know about you, but I saw this everywhere online. Love the movie, hate the movie, I personally didn't enjoy it in the slightest, but that's all irrelevant to the conversation. The fact is that it was everywhere online, and eventually Warner Brothers released this version of Justice League to the public. Once it came out, it was non-stop praise and adoration. Next to nothing negative was said or promoted about this movie. It didn't make sense. Purely from the standpoint of even the greatest movie of all time has haters. It doesn't matter how good something is, there is always someone to complain about it. It really made me scratch my head. Why did this movie create such a groundswell of hype, positivity, enthusiasm, and fervor? In fact, this movie is one of the most tweeted about movies of all time, getting the #1 spot in 2021. The numbers just didn't add up. It wasn't a massive blockbuster, the word on the ground was next to nothing, it seemed to solely exist online. Adding to all that was that Warner Brothers refused to continue Zack Snyder's film universe, and hasn't released the numbers of how Zack Snyder's Justice League actually did. In fact, one data company found that only 36% of viewers actually finished Zack Snyder's Justice League in its first week of release. Then it stopped. That was the end. The hype and the talk and the conversation ended like a switch was turned off. After the dust settled, I started seeing more and more voices of people who didn't enjoy it or were lukewarm to it, like me. The confusion I had still existed, but there was no evidence of anything strange, so that was that. We all moved on. Then comes Rolling Stone, who obtained copies of multiple cybersecurity reports commissioned by Warner Brothers. That's right, Warner Brothers themselves commissioned cybersecurity reports on #ReleaseTheSnyderCut, because the views that they actually got didn't match the hype. What the report showed was at the very least 13% of the conversations about Zack Snyder on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram involved fake authors, aka bots. One identified community was made up of real and fake authors that spread negative content about Warner Media for not restoring the Snyderverse, the 2021 report found. Additionally, 3 main leaders were identified within the authors scanned on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. 1 leader on each platform. These leaders receive the highest amount of engagement and have many followers, which gives them the ability to influence public opinion, meaning the one account on each platform was the main pusher of these opinions and goals. From those 3 accounts, everything came. It isn't at all surprising that bots and networks of accounts pretending to be real people were part of the overwhelming mass that acted like bringing the Snyder Cut to fruition was a job. Now think about this. The newer release of this movie cost an additional $60 million on post-production and editing costs. This huge push to get this made was the result of at least 13% fake accounts. It's like I said earlier, when you see enough AstroTurf support for something, it's common to have regular people go, "Hey, this is popular. I agree with this as well." Now think about how many times you've seen stuff like this online. Huge movements for something that seemingly come out of nowhere. Backlash, desire, anger, hype. The way this technology has been used on us is incalculable. Meaning whoever originally pushed the Snyder Cut movement got Warner Brothers to spend an extra $60 million on something that didn't make a return for them. That's an insane amount of power to wield. And this is just one example towards one company that we know about. Can you imagine how often this actually happens? Put enough funded pressure on anything or anyone and you can change things. It's too much power to have for something that isn't real.